Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is despair and how sometimes we can feel overwhelmed by emotion, whether it's the despair or some other intense emotion. And what we're going to talk about is how to move through that, to transmute it and to connect or reconnect with possibility and promise. So before we get started though, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your molecules, all your electrons, and all your cells, lighting you up from the inside out. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining stress, tension, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very, very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation and the tickling and the tingling, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Good morning to everyone else who's joining us. So good to have you here with us this morning. And happy Monday. And so to kick off our happy Monday, we're going to talk about despair. And the reason or the impetus for that topic is that over the weekend, it was so interesting. I became overcome with a deep, deep despair. And it wasn't because I was thinking anything. It was, in fact, I don't know what the reasoning was. That it wasn't reasoned. What I noticed is that I was aware of a dullness in my body. And as I allowed myself to tune into it, the tears started flowing. And there wasn't a story about it. There wasn't, it wasn't precipitated by anything in particular. It was just that my being was experiencing this deep, deep despair. And I resisted any impulse to make a story about it or to try and figure out where it was from or what it was about, and just allowed myself to be present to it in my body and throughout my being. Sorry, Maggie's chasing my feet to try and bite them. Sorry, I had to grab her because she draws blood. Anyway, so it was a very interesting experience because the emotion was very intense. And what I've learned over the years, particularly through the core connection work that I do with myself and with my clients, is that by presencing ourselves to the physical manifestation of emotional energy, that we then are able to allow it to move and to transmute and to release. And what I noticed was that there was a concentration of that emotion in my throat. I don't know if you've had the experience when you're crying, that your throat tightens, there's a constriction and almost I'm trying to think of a word for it, It's almost like a ringing of, like if you would wring out a cloth from, wring out the water from a cloth, you know, where there's this constricted twisting. And what came from that is I presenced myself to that sensation in my throat. I noticed that there was disruption in my belly. And it's interesting, um, just in terms of physiology, in my experience, I have had symptoms that have been diagnosed as thyroid issues. I take medication for that, and I have also historically had digestive issues. And so it was really interesting to experience these sensations, the nausea in my belly, and disruption there, and the constriction in my throat, as I was allowing myself to feel these feelings without trying to interpret them. The tears were running down my face, and in from time to time I would just erupt into weeping. And eventually that the intensity of that emotion, first of all, it was dulled. You know, when I started out, it was dulled, and I was kind of numb to it. When I allowed myself to be present to it, that's when I experienced the constriction in the throat and the disruption in the belly. And then I felt a whole channel of energy from my belly up to my throat, this bubbling, you know, like bubble, bubble, toil and trouble kind of feeling that was just coming up from my belly. And the tears would come in waves, and there would be moments of relief, and then it would come again. And then I would become aware of other sensations moving through my body, and following those sensations and being present to them, all of this without judgment and without interpretation. You know, the mind really wants to understand this stuff. And excuse me, I guess I'm still processing some of it. Anyway, the mind wants to understand this and make reasons for our experience. And the thing is, I tend to, I believe that we are connected, we're all connected through the morphic field. And that there are moments when we receive experience and emotion and knowing from this field that is beyond own our own individual experience. And so it may be that that's what was going on for me. Perhaps I was tapping into this greater experience of despair, but it was so powerful. And I decided to talk about it today because I don't think I'm alone in experiencing some of these emotions and feelings, and also some of the there's no such word as this, but inexplicableness, the lack of explanation for these emotions. Welcome, Pat. Good afternoon to you. So thank you for being here. We're talking about despair. And I had a deep experience of profound despair over the weekend. And my point in bringing this up is twofold. One, that we can effectively process this emotional energy, whether it be our own or whether it be something from the collective, that we can process this energy by presencing ourselves to the physicalness of it, to the embodiment of it. And when we allow ourselves to connect with the embodiment of the emotion and the energy of that, that we then, by presencing ourselves without judgment, without story, we then have the ability to allow that energy to move and dissipate or transmute, transform, release. And that's one point. And the other point is that I think that it's not unusual. I think that it's typical for us to be experiencing emotion and to be believing always that it's our own, and that it's arising from within us. And I want to put out a possibility to consider, particularly because there are so many of us who are just empathic, that we become channels, for instance, for these emotions, that we become a vehicle for the expression of maybe a collective experience. And I know that when we experience a lot of emotions, there's a tendency to judge ourselves, like I shouldn't be feeling this way, or I should be something else, for instance. And I invite you to recognize yourselves as part of a greater network of communication. And that communication may be emotional. Emotion doesn't have to have reason. You know, there's this energy of the collective that we have access to and that influences us, whether we're conscious of it or not. And this is my hypothesis. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying that this is my working belief. And anyway, it was really an interesting experience to just allow myself to move into that emotion without having to make it about me. So I didn't have to have a story about it. I didn't have to justify it. I just allowed it. And that was something of a new experience. I mean, I've been moving in that direction for quite some time, but this was of an intensity that I hadn't previously experienced, that without taking a personal ownership of it, if that makes some sense. Good morning, Robin. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us. We're talking about not just despair, but the intensity of emotion that we may experience, and how we can become a vehicle of transmutation for these emotions. So Rosalind says, I used a meditation to help me through by visualizing a healing pool of water, but yes, allowing and not judging. And, you know, interesting that you chose a healing pool of water, because water typically symbolizes emotion. And if we talk about a healing pool of water, then that's healing emotion. And I think if we can allow, thank you for sharing that, Rosalind, if we can allow ourselves to be relating to emotion as energy, then it makes it easier to relieve ourselves of self-judgment, like I shouldn't be feeling depressed or blah, 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 to relieve ourselves of judgment and enable the actual experience. And what I have found is that when we allow ourselves, and this is so important, I can't speak it enough. I know I've spoken it many times before, but it's just so powerful. When we allow ourselves to experience our experience, whether it's emotional pain or physical pain or whatever, even emotional bliss, when we allow ourselves to fully experience it, it passes, it moves, because we are like a river, and there's no moment in time where you can put yourself in the same river, because it's always in motion. And when we allow our emotion, energy in motion, when we allow our emotion to be, in other words, when we presence ourselves to it without judgment, without story, then that energy needs to or will move. It can't not move when we allow ourselves to experience it. And so I know that in our culture, we're largely taught, good morning, Elaine. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. We're talking about intense emotion, whether it's from within ourselves or whether we're receiving it from the field, and how we can move and transmute and transform that emotion simply by allowing ourselves to be present to it and to experience the embodiment of it, to experience the expression of that energy, of that emotion in our physical bodies. So as I was explaining earlier, my experience of despair was in my throat, which is so interesting because, you know, throat is through is representative of expression, but and maybe it felt, you know, maybe that was a component of this, you know, that there's so much despair right now in the world around around expression, around what's safe to express, what's not safe to express, what expressions may have resulted in negative consequences, or you know, being heard, all kinds of aspects of it, but that there might be, for me anyway, this despair was showing up first in my throat and then in my belly, with a sense of nausea and gastro interruption and eruption, for that matter. And I'm guessing I'm not alone in that. And there is a very close correlation with those representations in my body with physical conditions that have been, you know, that I've contended with throughout my life in one way or another. So very interesting to notice the manifestation of emotion. And I actually used muscle testing to identify the emotion as despair rather than as sorrow or grief or depression, you know, that it was despair. And there was something about that word despair, or is something about that word despair, that has so much potency to it, so much power to it, so much intensity to it, that, you know, it felt bigger than me. And in allowing that it might be bigger than me and that it might be something from the collective, I was able also to, by presencing myself, move that through. And I do, again, another working hypothesis, I do believe that we have the ability to be transforming the collective awareness or the collective experience, that we can be processing experience and consciousness for the collective that will shift, that will support the shift in our culture and in the world. And this is why meditation is so powerful, because it enables us to transmute and transform. It enables us to access other dimensions of experience and awareness. And it's interesting in meditation, in certain forms of meditation anyway, what we're looking to do is to become present to our consciousness beyond the body. And what I've found is that we, by presencing ourselves to the embodiment of our experience, that also supports the movement through to the other side of that experience. So the somatic, the body experience is if you can imagine that we're a generator, to be running that energy through the battery, through the generator, through the system, supports the system. So Rosalind says, feeling the body through body awareness helps the mind to shift from thoughts to focus on how the body is feeling. Naturally, breathing helps to get calm. From calm, the inward focus can shift thoughts to transmute. 100%, Rosalind, beautifully said. And the thing, when we recognize how the body is feeling, I want to take that even a step further. The sensations that we're feeling in our body are energy sensations. There are electrical impulses that are occurring throughout the body and being. We are an energetic system. So there's a neurological, energetic, electrical system that we are in the very foundation of our being. And by putting, our thought is also energy, and by directing that energy, that thought, to the place of experience where that energy is localized in the body, oftentimes through pain or constriction or vibration or any other kinds of sensations, when we put our attention there, we're feeding energy into that part of the system, and that energy of intention and attention. And through that energy of intention and attention, what's happening is that congestion of energy that results in pain, for instance, or certain vibration might be a release of energy. But when we put our attention there, we're powering that transformation. And through energizing that transformation, we're enabling stuck energy, congested energy, compressed energy to move and to transform. And so all of this, if you can imagine that there's a huge circuit, and there are places in the circuit where there are blockages, by putting our attention to that place without judgment, without story, what we're enabling is for that blockage to start dissipating and dissolving, and then to be able to be part of a renewed and empowered flow. So I wanted to share that because there are so many intense emotions that we are feeling individually and collectively, that I think that we all can serve as vehicles. I think we all serve as vehicles, whether consciously or not. I think that we serve as vehicles to transmute this energy of the collective on some level or another. And so this idea that perhaps the emotions that we're feeling are not necessarily generated from within us all the time. That's not to say that they're not on occasion, or maybe even most of the time, but that we also are subject to this collective field. So it's a level of awareness that we get to not personalize everything. Maybe it's not so personal. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up for this morning. I so appreciate your being here and engaging in these conversations, and it means the world to me. You light up my days, and I'm tremendously grateful. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. Please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network on the Facebook page and on Enlightened World Living and EWN One with the Earth. It's a grand and beautiful community, and I am so grateful to be part of it with you. So until next time, breathe, presence yourself, and allow all that energy to flow.